Todos queremos tener una vida que valga la pena, pero en medio de la vorágine diaria, perdidos en redes sociales y guiados por la presión de tener éxito, muchas veces nos olvidamos de quiénes somos y sobre todo de quiénes queremos ser. La riqueza de nuestra vida se construye a partir de nuestros recursos internos. Aprende herramientas científicas basadas en la psicología positiva con líderes reconocidos y transforma tu vida, la de tu escuela, organización y por supuesto la de tu familia con nuestros programas. Te esperamos.
Welcome back. We had an amazing networking session. I joined a couple of them. Oh my goodness, there's so much going on. I just came out from one session in Chile with 220 people from all over Chile, and they are still on with 5 speakers. It's amazing. So everything is going incredible, but I'm especially happy because now we are gonna be talking about love. And actually, all this event is about the pandemic of loneliness. Is about belonging as one of those tools to use in order to fight. I don't like the word fight, but to work around loneliness and this pandemic. But there are other pandemics, and in this case, there is one that has been led by my sister, my super friend, Shelly. And I think that she's already here. So why don't you come on?
Hi.
And oh my goodness, we are gonna be talking about love with somebody that has created a pandemic herself.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, as I was waiting here to see you, I still remember the meditation that we did in Hollywood.
Yeah.
At the beach, love and kindness, and the other amazing community that you've been trained for this pandemic of love. You know that.
Well, I definitely feel like when I reflect back on especially the last 4 years of my life, that the theme is that I have been showing up, which is something that we all can do every day. And I think that when we consistently show up, even if we're not up to it or we feel like we're not enough, amazing things happen,
Okay, so let's frame a bit. We have 20 minutes more or less, fireside chat, but then you're going to be running a longer session, and people will have the opportunity to learn a bit of your wisdom. But why don't we frame basically what we said is, let's talk about love, loneliness, belonging. But I think something very important that people have to know is that you've been building communities that you've been highlighted by Mindful. That was probably one of the first times around meditation, around actually using tools to help people. You've been helping so many wise men and women in the mindfulness space, like Sharon Salzberg and so many others, Amishiya. We've been sitting on the board of You Mindfulness at some point together as well. But it's amazing, everything that you've been doing. And now you are on TV all the time, and you have Joe Biden calling you to say thank you. So why don't we go back a bit, okay? Let's go back before the beach.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the beach, and then let's move into pandemic of love, right? So we frame that, and then we talk about loneliness, belonging, and love.
In 20 minutes, minutes. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, before the beach, and I'll explain what the beach means for people who don't know what that means. For 20 years, I was in the corporate world as an executive in public and private companies. My last position in corporate America was as a president of a mid-sized firm with 2,400 employees across 14 markets all across the country. And, I was going through my own reckoning. I had been in my own personal practice, a meditator for 20 years. It was not something I ever thought I would do full time or that I would basically teach. But out of loneliness, which is a theme, and out of the desperation for connection, human connection, in one of the most stressful times in my life, as I was going through this reckoning of being in the corporate world and finally getting to a stage, especially as a woman in an industry that historically there were really not a lot of women leaders in my industry in particular. And I felt miserable. I was so miserable. I finally reached the apex and the goal that I wanted to reach in my life. And what I realized in reflecting back was that my entire life was centered around goals. And I started to feel this emptiness, and I wanted to reframe my life so that it wouldn't be centered around goals anymore or achievements, but actually to be centered around intentions and really setting an intention every single day and showing up for that intention in the best way that I can, right? If only for today, whatever that intention is going to be. And so out of this feeling of desperation and wanting community, I just posted on Facebook that I was going to teach meditation or gather a group of friends. I don't even know how many friends I had at the time on Facebook, probably like a few hundred, honestly. And I just said, hey, I'm going to be at the beach on a Sunday morning in November of 2015. And whoever wants to join me, this is the place where I'll be. This is the time. Let's meet. And I got there and I honestly had no idea who was going to show up that morning. And I don't know if they felt sorry for me. I don't know if they were going through something, in their life, but 12 of my friends showed up. And we had such an incredible time, meditating together, but also being vulnerable with each other and really creating this safe space in a beautiful location on the beach in Hollywood. What better way is there to spend a Sunday morning? And my friends and I decided that it was so lovely that we would meet again in a few weeks after that. And a few weeks after that, they invited a few of their own friends. And then the weeks after that, they invited their friends. And it just kind of became this social network in a way, but actually not based on technology, based on real human connection. And when you fast forward to May of 2016, we would have anywhere from 800 to 1,000 people every Sunday on the beach, which was like just mind blowing, because understand that I still had a fiduciary responsibility to the company that I was running. So every Sunday I would wear this one hat as a meditation teacher and as a community organizer. And then I would, Sunday night, get prepared to go to work on Monday morning. And what I started noticing was that I was feeling emptier and emptier every Sunday night and really starting to have panic attacks driving into work on Monday morning. And my husband and my son actually did an intervention finally on a family trip that we took to the Pacific Northwest in the summer, that summer of 2016. And they said, you're miserable. You have to start following your own advice. You can't keep follow your passions. You tell everybody to do that and everything will work out. We'll love you anyways, we'll support you. We'll figure out our life. We'll make sacrifices. And so I took the leap. I took a leap of faith with amazing support from family and from friends and people who were in my front row, cheering me on. And I had no idea, by the way, what I was going to do. In my mind, I thought I was going to go teach in corporate spaces because I thought, well, I have an authentic experience for 20 years in the corporate world. So I need to go teach in the corporate world. And I'll tell you that I went to the first one or two sessions that I did in like a boardroom at a typical company. And I quickly realized that that's not where I wanted to be. I was like, okay, I need to start thinking about this a little bit differently. And so I realized that what was really unique about the beach gathering were a couple of things, but first and foremost was that there was no barrier to entry. And what that means is that it was free. It was free for everyone, anyone who wanted to come. The other thing that I recognize is that I always describe myself as an unlikely meditator. And I felt like this gathering was for other unlikely meditators in an unlikely space. Because what happens is that when you, at least here in the US, when you go into a typical yoga studio or even into a Lululemon store, for example, a brand that I love, but when you go into a store, you look around, who are you seeing? Mostly white, middle-aged women, right? Who have a socioeconomic status of at least X. Yeah. You're not necessarily seeing diversity. You're not seeing a woman who's like obese or like has, body shaming issues. And what was really enthralling and fascinating about what was happening at the beach was that because this was an unlikely space, because there was no barrier to entry, because it was just kind of like anything goes, and just really quick, in and out. There was like no commitment. You have to sign up for anything. We got all sorts of people. We literally had like people from every generation. We had people, that were from all different castes and races and from religions and from countries. And it was incredible to watch the connection that started happening between people that otherwise probably would never have traveled in the same circles and never would have met. But in this really unique space, all of these friendships started to develop, these connections. And we realized and recognized that we are more similar than we are different. And so I continued to do these, events. And I think that's around the time that you and I met as well, when I was staging an event at the American Airlines Arena for the Miami Heat.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yes.
In meditation.
Yes.
The first ever large-scale meditation event with a professional sporting team. And it was myself and David G, and it was like this really incredible experience. And it's hard to believe that was 4 years ago, but around that same time that I was kind of trying to figure out where I was heading and what was unique about what I was doing, the election happened. And like a lot of Americans, I felt very disappointed in the results of the election. And I was feeling a lot of grief as well. I'm the type of person in my default mode, if you will, to speak in like, a meditation talk for a minute. My default mode, rather than I go through the whole fight, flight, freeze mode, which we all are like conditioned to do, of course, evolutionarily. But then I like shift into an empathy action mode. I go into this place where when people are in despair, I immediately, after I like get over my own emotions and cry it out on the bathroom floor, I think to myself, like, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? And so I went into action mode, and I reached out to a bunch of individuals that I knew. I said, okay, I'm going to get involved. I became the area leader for the Broward Democratic Party. I became really involved with the Women's March movement and the Women's March movement in Washington, D.C. and nationally. And I started to realize after the Women's March, come February, March, April, that people started to stop showing up. And it was so confusing to me because I was like, there was so much momentum and like, where is everybody? Like, what happened? And I realized that what was happening, people were dropping like flies because of activist fatigue and burnout.
Yeah.
And so I was really interested in how I could help this movement, how I could help activists around the country, how I could help volunteer organizations, nonprofits, to build resilience and to really examine the intricacies between self-care as an individualistic pursuit and communities of care, right? Communities of care as a pursuit of building safety nets and building communities that I would say exist still to this day in countries all over the world, you know, culturally speaking. But here in the US, we are like way more far removed than we've ever been, even from like people that live across the hallway from us. We don't really know what's going on in their life. And so as I started to kind of build this platform out and teaching for organizations like Planned Parenthood and ACLU and all these other organizations, around that same time that it was starting to get traction, the Parkland shooting happened, which is the shooting where 17 lives were lost at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in February of 2018. So now I'm a community organizer. I'm the area leader for the Broward Democratic Party. I was the chair of the Women's March in Florida, I co-chair. And it was like this perfect storm of things that sort of were happening. And I immediately within 24 hours was put into touch with an individual that was starting to plan the March for Our Lives movement as a consultant, somebody who could like help, you know, like just all the knowledge that I gained in the last year and a half. And so I proceeded to help, and I saw the same things happening to that community with compassion fatigue and activist burnout. But this time there was another layer of PTSD that was not being, you know, adhered to. Yeah. So I really started to get more involved in trauma-informed mindfulness as a mindfulness teacher, and really got embedded with communities affected by gun violence and mass shootings all over this country. And so that's been really pre-pandemic. I would say the brunt of most of my work is like leading the community here that I had in South Florida, and also working with communities affected by gun violence and mass shootings in the US. And, you know, fast forward to February or March of this year, when the pandemics came to the US and closures, and people started to, you know, we had to shelter in home, and there were all these closure announcements. And I started to see on my social media feeds, and I was getting emails and text messages, because now people were looking to me to say like, what are we gonna do? Or I'm really scared. Like I'm a waitress, or I'm a bartender. Like I can't afford to put groceries in my fridge for 2 weeks to feed my children. Like I haven't paid my electric bill. How are my lights gonna turn off? You know, all of these concerns and fears started bubbling up. So I went back into default mode on March 14th. And I thought to myself, okay, love over fear, right? Love over fear. What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? And so I leaned into this really incredible pillar of communities of care that I had been teaching all over the country to volunteer and nonprofit organizations, called mutual aid. And mutual aid is such a beautiful, beautiful concept. It's not something that I invented. It's honestly something that our grandparents could talk about, right? Because when they talk about it, they tell us back in the day when we were kids, if, you know, Joseph next door lost his job, the whole community would know, and they would come together to make sure that he kept his roof over his head. If somebody got sick, somebody would just show up with food at their door. It was that sort of network that created the safety net that made sure that every single person in the community had enough equity, enough. And so the mantra that has really driven me this entire pandemic is enough is a feast.
Wow.
Enough is a feast.
Powerful.
And so I created these two really simple, on March 14th, really simple Google forms. One was called Give Help, one was called Get Help. And the idea was just, okay, people who need something like groceries or, you know, something else could fill out the form and indicate what they need. And then people who were able to help could fill out what they would be able to help with. And then we would match the two of them, and there would be this beautiful human connection that would form. And in order, this is the beautiful part about this organization. is that we are not a nonprofit. We're actually a nonprofit disruptor. And what that means is that we don't have a bank account. We don't take money from anyone. We're just a network, grassroots network of volunteers. We have no overhead. And what happens is that in order for a transaction to occur between donor and recipient, the donor has to reach out to the recipient and have a conversation.
Wow.
And they have to connect on a human level. And they have to be willing to walk a mile in that person's shoes or put a different lens on. And in many, many, many cases now, Luis, like we've had hundreds of thousands. We are up to 780,000 connections at this point. And we've transacted over $42.5 million since March. And it's all been done directly. But the most beautiful byproduct of all has been that human connection, the opportunity to feel seen and heard, and also to see and hear somebody on both sides, which really, in a time of disconnection, is the most beautiful thing of all, you know?
Goodness. Wow. 20 minutes straight. I love it. But you know, you had to do it that way because otherwise we don't see the full picture. Now we understand. And it's powerful. It's very, very powerful. So, but you know, I feel, because I know you, that this is just the beginning of something else. So we don't know what that's gonna be, but now you are trained.
We're gonna go with the flow.
So, okay, it's so much. I mean, we're gonna stay hours because there's so many angles, so many intricacies, so many interconnections here. But what do you think is? Of course, you chose love over fear, but after so much you know about human needs. But if you were to say, okay, is the right moment? Is the right need? Is the right emotion? Is the right void for people to act? There are many possible reasons, but how do you explain? How do you explain what's going on? And how do you explain that you were able to get so quickly into action?
Yeah.
And you were able to now get the platform to move anywhere you want.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy question, but we have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
For that, and then we move into the workshop. But I am super curious about what happened, what really happened.
God, I think part of it was, just like in the business world, like being first to market, being an early adopter, the fact that I sort of jumped in without thinking much about anything, and also not having like a vision in mind that this would be like a global thing. There's a Latin, I know you have a lot of Latin American and Central American countries on this feed. There is a website, pandemiadeamor.com, which is, basically replicating what we've done here in North America. So please, by all means, go on that site if you can give help or get help. Yes. And so I think being an early adopter, I always have a thought that there are two kinds of people in this world. There's the what ifs and the why nots. And the what ifs are people who just analyze everything to death and nothing gets done, or it gets done very slowly. And then there's the why nots who are like, okay, why not? Yeah, let me just try it. And worst case scenario, we can adapt it, or it doesn't work, or we could try something different, And so really, I'm very much of a why not type of person. And I just said, there's a need and it's an emergency. People literally are going to go hungry if I don't do something in this moment right now. So that's one part. I think the other part, certainly, I can't discount the fact that I did have influencers who saw the original post that I made on my feed, and they shared it within the first 24 hours. We had people like Chelsea Handler and Maria Shriver and Deborah Messing post about it, and Busy Phillips, and that definitely gave it a boost, beyond measure, where we started getting people from all around the country. But the most important thing I want to I think I can credit the longevity and sustainability to is the hard work of our volunteer network. So we have over 1,000 volunteers who have started to over 220 chapters all around the world. And they work so hard to make sure that they are matching people in their community, not just financially, but with many other things that they need, help for their pets or, help with their car problems or things like that, like somebody needs a couch, somebody needs, whatever, Christmas presents, etc. And so at the micro community level, the beauty of mutual aid works the way that I explained it to you, the way our grandparents talk about it working, right? And so I think that the feeling of giving, the ability at a time when people couldn't physically connect to each other, and a lot of people, especially on the donor side, were like desperate to figure out a way to help. They wanted to be of service, and they were like, what can I do? Like, besides writing a check to XYZ organization, like, what can I physically do? And this really answered the call, this answered that question where they were like, this is a direct way. And I know, number one, where my money is going.
Yeah.
And I get to see it in action, which is just incredible.
It's amazing. Well, you really tap into a system.
Yeah.
It's you tap into a system, and actually that connection created new synapses, I feel, because otherwise, I mean, normally this doesn't happen unless it's when something becomes viral. But it's normally communications. What you did is beyond communications. This is really is real action, is real change.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's continue later. So in 1 hour we are gonna see you on a workshop. But oh my goodness, you just fire the whole thing up. Of course, it's love, and love trumps fear. We know that for sure. And well, I just have to say thank you so much, because
thank you.
Belonging is about inspiring, and for me, and you are amazing, inspiring. So this is fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's such an honor to be in your company again, my friend. I appreciate it.
Yes, and we have to talk further about how we connect the chapters, the agoras, with your volunteer network volunteer. Because here we have already 100. And this can become your ambassadors as well. So let's talk about that. Thank you, Shelly. And we'll see you in 1 hour. Thank you.
See you then. Bye-bye.